welcome back to Room 237, and I have yet another anthology horror film for you. And as you notice, my last bunch of anthologies have been 60s and 70s Amicus films, and even ones that get associated with Amicus films. Well, this is the last one from that era. All other anthologies that I had planned are either more recent, older, not really British or anything. But actually, I don't really think this one is mostly British, but it's 1973's Tales That Witness Madness. And yes, this is another one that gets associated or lumped in with Amicus. It gets mistaken for Amicus. But it was actually put out by World Film Services. Yeah, this is a really lame cover. The original cover is similar. You'll see it in the thumbnail. A lot better than this. But it was directed by Freddie Francis, who, of course, directed a number of films for Hammer. Paranoiac, Evil of Frankenstein, and even some other Amicus anthologies, like Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. I believe he did either Tales from the Crypt or Vault of Horror. I think it was Tales from the Crypt. A non-anthology from Amicus called The Skull. And so one thing I can say, it is well directed. You do get some very decent shots in it. Similar to Amicus, has a really great cast. Like Donald Pleasance, Donald Houston, Joan Collins, Kim Novak, Susie Kendall, who's been in a number of films, probably most notably Torso. She was the lead in Torso. She's also the one that's on the cover of Torso. It has 4 stories in it. Donald Pleasance is in the wraparound, and he plays this doctor at this asylum who believes he has cured 4 patients, and he's showing it to, I think, the director. I think that's who it was, the director of the asylum, a colleague, who's played by Jack Hawkins. And we see each case, or each patient, we see their story. And to be honest, it's kind of forgettable. I mean, there was 2 stories that were fairly interesting. The other 2, one was kind of boring, and then the other one was, just not interesting at all. But the first one is called Mr. Tiger. And that is, there's this kid named Paul, who's played by Russell Lewis. He's a very shy, introverted kid, but he's quite intelligent. And he has this imaginary friend who is a tiger. And his parents are always bickering. They're always fighting, especially about how to raise him. She thinks he's a very delicate child. The father thinks, he's ruined. He's a boy. He needs to be a boy. He needs to, go out, get dirty, get in fights, play sports, be tough. And his dad is played by Donald Houston. Mother's played by Georgia Brown. Which Donald Houston, let's see what else he was in. He only worked up until 1981. But anyway, and he has this child psychiatrist. I think it was named Philip, and he's collecting like meat and stuff for his imaginary tiger. We see him talking to his imaginary tiger. Of course, we don't see it. And his mother goes along with it. She's not happy about it, but she goes along with it. Eventually, we find out that Mr. Tiger, who he calls Matthew, does not like his parents. And at the very end, his parents go in to talk to him about the smell of meat, hiding meat, and really believing he has a imaginary pet tiger. Come to find out, this tiger is real, or it's able to physically manifest itself, and eats his parents. And I kind of liked that story. It was simple. It was interesting to see a story about a kid, a young kid, in a film like this. I didn't think the kid was annoying. I thought the kid was I think he actually did a good job. A very intelligent kid. You can definitely see that the twist was coming, like it was going to be real, but didn't really explain how it truly manifested itself. The second story really lost me. It's called a Penny Farthing, which the patient is a guy named Timothy, played by Peter McHenry. He has some sort of store, and he gets a portrait of Uncle Albert and a penny farthing bicycle, which is one of those old bikes with the huge front tire, the tiny rear tire. And his girlfriend is played by Susie Kendall. So he puts the bike and the portrait in this one room, and there are some interesting shots where the portrait will react to the bike or something else that's going on. We'll see Uncle Albert in the portrait look down at the bike or look at someone. And the portrait can make the wheel on this bicycle turn, and it keeps sort of beckoning Timothy to get on it and pedal, which time travels him back to Uncle Albert's period, where he sees that Uncle Albert's love interest is also played by Susie Kendall. And it doesn't really make any sense. We do see some sort of old, with kind of poor makeup. Kind of looks more like a Christopher Lee's Frankenstein monster makeup, almost. From Hammer's first Frankenstein film. And at one point, there's a fire. I didn't really know what was going on in this story. I found it very boring. The third story I found more interesting, and this one's called Mel. And the patient is a guy named Brian, who's played by Michael Jaston. He finds this old dead tree outside, and he brings it inside. And he likes the look of it, sort of shape of it, which it's it has these two thick stumps coming down, the trunk, and then sort of longer branches coming out. Almost looks like a person. And the top of it, sort of, the bark is coming off as smooth white. And he calls it Mel. And I think either he carves Mel into it, or as the bark falls off, it reveals that there's Mel carved into it. But his wife is played by Joan Collins, and she starts first she finds the tree very ugly and doesn't want it. At one point, she's even vacuuming, and she can tell almost like her mind's playing tricks on her. The tree's like moving. It can like push leaves off of it onto the floor where she just vacuumed. And eventually, the more bark that comes off to reveal the soft white tree, it starts to look more like a woman's body. And Joan Collins is getting increasingly jealous and agitated. They're more at each other's throats. One night they have sex. She goes down to the tree with a machete. We hear some like branch and leaf sounds. He comes in, and it is predictable as to what's going to happen, but I still found it interesting and entertaining. He comes down, he's like, now why would you do that? Alright, I guess I'll clean it up. Shows him outside, sort of burying something. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, but ended up like this. Comes home, and he's talking like, I'm home. Anybody here love me? Because his wife said, someone who loves you's in here. Goes up to the bedroom, and the tree is in the bed, with enough of the bark coming out to look like exposed breasts, I guess. Which I kind of like that look, like the bark, the way it's shaped, almost looks kind of like lingerie, like revealing. Yeah, kind of simple and weird, but I thought it was interesting enough. Definitely better than the second story and the one that's last, which the last one is called Luau, where this woman played by Kim Novak, who I know I've seen her in other stuff, which I think in the initial reception for this film, she was the only one that was kind of criticized, because everyone else in the film is sort of really dry, and she's kind of, her acting's a bit more over the top. She was in Vertigo, of course, by Hitchcock. Okay, well, she's a literary agent, and she has this new client who has more interest in her daughter, played by Mary Tam, character Ginny. And she's playing this luau, and then the guy Chemo, the client, basically he wants to get closer to the daughter Ginny so he can sacrifice her to a Hawaiian god, because it keeps cutting to him with his dying mother, and he wants to appease this Hawaiian god so that she can get into heaven. And so he has to like sacrifice a virgin, and it's her. But Kim Novak is the patient, and it seems like she knows exactly what's going on. Or maybe she doesn't. Because like he has his associate take care of the body. But anyway, the most interesting part of this movie would have to be the epilogue. Because Donald Pleasance then brings in all four patients into this room. They're behind two-way glass, or one-way glass, two-way mirror. And we see that, okay, like the boy comes in with a real tiger. The guy, the one guy is like walking in with a bike. They all have some sort of manifestation from their story. And it keeps cutting to like them like that, and them just standing there with nothing. Donald Pleasance sees them with the manifestation. The colleague does not. So he thinks Donald Pleasance is just as crazy as these patients. And so that's when he's like, there's nothing there to see. So he closes the window. These doctors come in, take Donald Pleasance away. He's going to be declared insane. Colleague goes into the room himself where the young boy is. The tiger comes out and attacks him. Movie ends. So the things were real. I kind of breezed right through this review. One, because I'm trying to make my video shorter. And two, there's really not much to talk about. I mean, well, I will say the music was kind of forgettable up until the last story, I think it was, when the daughter's being, cut up and disposed of. There's like, it has the ominous horror music in the background, but there's also like, it sounds like tapping on coffee cans and like those instruments you have in like elementary school, like the sticks where you like, or like the things where you go like this and it kind of makes that sound as well. So sort of like the Chainsaw Massacre kind of sound effect music. So I thought that was pretty neat and interesting as well. It is well directed. I mean, you're always in good hands with Freddie Francis. The performances, I thought, were all fine. I mean, it would have been nice if Donald Pleasance was in it more. But, kind of like how my last review was for The Uncanny, which, of course, Peter Cushing is always great. And he was just in the wraparound and in between frame pieces. But I thought everyone did a fine job. Even the kid in the first story, I thought the kid did a really good job. It was cool to see Susie Kendall from Torso play two people. So, I mean, like an Amicus film, it has a pretty recognizable, capable cast. Of course, it's not Amicus, but it always gets lumped in with them. But, I mean, the setup is interesting. The wraparound is interesting. Okay, this doctor thinks he's cured these 4 patients, and we see their story. Which even the title tells that witness madness, There's a reason why the state now thinks they're mad. And we get to see what that tale is. That all works. The story with the kid and the tiger, I thought was interesting. It was different. And the one with the tree, it was odd and simple and predictable, but I thought it worked. But the one about the time traveling, I could see that working. I just thought it was boring. And then the one with, the Hawaiian god and the sacrifice, I just didn't find that interesting at all. In fact, it kind of made me think of the sort of Hawaiian, I think it was Hawaiian, story from Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, where the guy steals the music. I would even say that story was a bit more interesting than the last one. I mean, it's not to say they're bad, it's just they weren't for me. Like, if people do like those 2 stories, I get it. I can see how. Just not for me. But, yeah, I would definitely put this below probably all the Amicus films. Certainly below the Uncanny. Yeah, not one of my favorite anthologies at all. Probably not the worst. I mean, it's still better than Creepshow 3. Absolutely. Well, I don't know. I'd probably say it's on par with From Beyond the Grave. So, like, I mean, maybe this is a rant or a mild rant, but it's not that I disliked it. I thought it was more. It was just as equally a miss as it was a hit. But yeah, so for the rest of the month, I'll be going because I wanted to finish this era, or like the Amicus and similar anthologies. So for the rest of the month, I'll be going back and forth between just the more random anthologies I have and the silent horror films from the 20s. So I guess look out for those. But yeah, Tales That Witness Madness, really not that great. And I know short review didn't really go in depth with it because there's not much to say at all. But yeah, thank you for watching.